Drop the background.
Welcome, everybody, to take 6 of Coaches on Call. Couple things you might recognize right out of the gate, besides myself, Holly Fogel, and Lori Hamilton.
Hey.
Hey, we are starting to progress. We have microphones.
We got equipment.
Decided to ditch the background because neither of us liked the way our hair looked with the virtual background. So a little bit of our egos popping in. Not that my hair looks great, but we decided, you know what? We don't want the backgrounds. We got our microphones, and this is a work in progress. So I hope that we're actually demonstrating to y'all that it's progress, not perfection. So maybe we're actually helping you guys figure out that you don't have to be perfect just to get started and to have fun and to educate and really have a voice out there and try to help people. And that's what we're all about here at Coaches on Call.
Yeah, just like Jared James says, not one day, day one. So we did our day one a while back, and we're still just going for it. So
yep. Still moving along.
Exactly. And I don't like today, we don't really have a hot topic today. I think this is kind of a topic where we're bringing back our skills. Okay. And I like talking about this because you recently just did a continuing education class on this, which is our pricing strategy, which makes a lot of the agents in our office stand out and be a little bit different. And I want to talk today about how do we talk to sellers about pricing their home, because we do it differently.
Yeah. And it's the funny thing is the journey that we've all been through. We were introduced into a very high level skilled pricing strategy roughly 7-8 years ago. Went through that process of digesting this material, presenting it to our office, to our agents. I had the opportunity to go out and practice this strategy with my friends and family and past clients, myself. So I've actually been able to use it in real time. We've role played this. It's become really powerful. And then all of a sudden 2019, 2020 hit, and we weren't really using much of this. Like a lot of we'd start with the good intentions, but the market was a little bit unhinged when it came to actual facts and comps. And so we were in this little wind tunnel for 2 years. And I feel that a lot of our skills, whether it be the marketing plan, our pricing strategy, our negotiation skills, a lot of the things that we were just in tune with doing and kind of got used to, kind of got thrown upside down a little bit. Days on market was shorter. Now we had to learn a new skill set. How are we going to handle 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 offers at one time? So all of a sudden these new skills came in, and we learned all those, dealt with the market. I think a lot of people are on overload, exhausted. And now we have that transition. So not only are we as the professionals, I really argue we're moving into the professionals market. How do we kind of get back into the fundamentals of what really helps us stand out, educate, and really provide that high level of service to our clients? So this is going to be a great topic, and I think very timely, because it's all about setting expectations and our favorite self-discovery. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
So this is called the 7-step pricing strategy. That's what it's been called. But if you could just say one thing that makes this totally different from going in with a 40-page CMA or going in and doing a listing presentation on your laptop, what would you say is the biggest differentiator in this strategy?
I think it's conversation based, and it's all around the client self-discovering where they need to price their own house.
Yep.
So conversational, we have really eliminated the word presentation from our dialogue completely. And it really is help educating the client with tangible and logical data sets that help that client self-discover exactly where they need to price the house, so that they take full responsibility and ownership for the price, which then really lays out a beautiful partnership for you and your client. And I love that about it.
Yeah. I mean, just with that, I remember when I took that class for the first time and you told me that was the main difference, I was kind of hooked because I'd been doing it kind of the same old way for years, and it felt like it was always a presentation and it was my opinion that I was giving them, and they didn't agree with my opinion, and how do I get them to agree with my opinion? So I would say I'd agree with you that that's the biggest differentiator. So out of 7 steps, what's the first thing we do?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with your own mindset. So setting up your beliefs around pricing, your beliefs around your business, your beliefs around your clients. We live in a world of abundance. I think it's important to understand the difference between value and price. And then I think agents really need to understand that pricing is also not only just about value, but it's about justification. And you have to be able to justify that price. So what I love about this is it's so powerful on both the buyer and the seller side. So of course we're going to go in and talk about pricing with our seller clients, but it's extremely important when you're working with a buyer. When you're evaluating properties. Oh, and there's Denver hopping in just to say hi to everybody.
Hey, Denver.
Hey there. So there's just some things that you just can't unscript.
It's okay. I
Right.
mean, you just can't.
I mean,
Don't
we're
worry.
all on Zoom.
We're
right?
keeping it real.
We're keeping it real here. So I think it's just really important to, take those clients through that process that really helps them self-discover and not just pick a price out of the air or whatever. We have to be able to justify with comps when we're making an offer and when we're listing a property. So that's what I like about this is that agents become even more skilled because they're using it on both the buyers and seller side, going through this whole process that we're going to talk about. So I think step one is really understanding the market as a whole in relation to the client's property that you're going to, and whether that means a community that's, one way in and one way out and a whole set of homes, or if it's a school district, or if it's a city or a town, however you're going to gather the comps. I think the most important thing is that you're gathering the entire market, what's happening in the whole market of that local property. Does that make sense?
It does. Are you looking at the solds first? Is that what you're doing?
Yes, and I think another main difference is we don't. If I'm going on an appointment, and the house is 4 bedroom, 3 bath on a finished basement, I am not just scouring the market for 4 bedroom, 3 bath homes on a basement.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually looking at the whole picture. So what I'm trying to do is look at who was successful in the last 6 months in the area that I decide I want to try to secure comps from. And sometimes that is going to be a subdivision. Sometimes you're going to have to go out a mile. Sometimes it's going to be a school district. You all know your localized markets. So finding the comps is not going to be different in this strategy, except for the fact that we're going to include every sale, not just like properties. And that's where I find this has the biggest impact for the seller to be able to self-discover, because we're going to bring in all the properties. And what we're trying to do out of the people that were successful is find 3 ranges of price points: a high range, a mid range, and a low range.
Makes sense.
Most people are just going to bring in 4 bedroom, 3 bath homes on a basement. So it's a smaller subset of data.
Yeah, your apples to apples is now apples, oranges, and pears. And that was a big learning lesson for me.
And it took a little while for all of us to wrap our head around that because we just weren't used to it. So we talk about change being difficult when you get into a rhythm. And I do want to just articulate one thing. This strategy a lot of times will not deliver a different price than you would normally. So I'm not saying that you might find a different price by using the strategy. What you're going to do is help the seller self-discover which range they fall in. They actually end up picking the price. So your ability to price homes isn't really in question. What's in question is your ability to artfully use a different set of data tools to have your seller self-discover where they need to price their house. And that's the magical piece of the pricing strategy. The seller is going to self-discover which range their house falls into based off of the features, amenities, conditions, size, location, year built, square footage, etc. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I like that because if they're self-discovering and they see, well, I knew my neighbor down the street sold for 500,000. Well, they had a finished basement. They had 5 bedrooms, 4 baths. You have 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, no basement. Like you have to be in that high range and get that price, you've got to have a basement. Did I miss the basement somewhere? So it doesn't become just my opinion that I think you need to be here. It's they're seeing my house doesn't have what it needs to have. So that's what I loved when you would teach this and learning the different value ranges. That's where I felt you could really position yourself and help that seller understand why they weren't going to sell just like their neighbor down the street. Well, if my neighbor got it, I want it too.
Yeah, and they're not necessarily looking at the key indicators that we are, which is all the different, descriptions in the remarks of what is actually adding to value. Did they have granite? Did they have hardwood floors? Did they do upgrades that you don't have? You're going to find those when you pull out the subset of the description of the properties. So rather than using photos, we actually keep everything on 3 spreadsheets. So we're really going in with a successful seller's spreadsheet, a rejected by the market spreadsheet, and a direct competition spreadsheet.
Mhm.
And they're able to actually be able to see right on one sheet where their home is going to fall based off of their own condition. So if I only brought in 6 properties that all had the same thing that they had, say I went on an appointment and they had a slab. This is probably
Mhm.
the best example. They're on a slab. They live in a huge community. I go in with 10 solds. They all have slabs. They're anywhere from 300 to 350, right? Maybe that's the range that all these slabs go in. So they're looking at all the slabs. And of course, to them, they have the best home on the planet.
Of course.
Doesn't matter what features, benefits they have. It doesn't matter. Their home is the best. They're always going to feel that way typically. So they're looking at that and they're looking at all the slabs, and maybe somebody goes in with all these pictures and they're page by page. So now you're just going from page. They can't, as soon as you flip the page, it's gone. They don't even remember what was on that page. So basically they're kind of looking at what you have, but they're still thinking to themselves, yeah, mine's better. Hurry up. Mine's better. Mine's better. Right. So they're doing that because it's not all logically put in one spot where they can actually see, like, ooh, square footage right there. Ooh, bedrooms, bathrooms, basement or not basement. But so if I go on that appointment and just bring in slabs and they happen to have heard that somebody around the corner got 380, maybe they know that it didn't have a slab, but maybe they didn't. Maybe they just hear things, or maybe they're looking on Zillow and they don't even know what they're looking at. They just see these prices and they're like, wow, they got 379. They got this, that in their mind. And maybe this estimate or whatever, who knows? So they're thinking they want more. So I go in with just the slabs, and then I go in with just the slabs and I show them and I think you need to be between 3 and 350. But in their mind, they were already thinking 360. They're like, I can get 360, 365. So they might be bold enough to say, I think you're wrong. I mean, there's been other homes that sold for higher, or they might not be bold and they might just sit there and go, okay, okay. And then they're like, well, we'll think about it.
Yeah.
And they don't pull the trigger. They're pulling the trigger because then you might leave and they might be like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Like there's 5 other homes that sold way above this. And if I've only gone in with slabs, then they're still thinking that they can get more. Whereas if I go in with a spreadsheet and I have it highlighted, high range, mid range, and low range, and all the low range all say slab, and the mid range at 365, 369 says unfinished basement, it's as clear as day that the only way they're going to be in that mid range is if they have similar amenities and features. Which is why I think a lot of people moved away from this strategy, because we were kind of challenging a lot of stuff over the last 2 years, which we're not any longer.
No.
So getting back into this to be that high level professional that goes in looking different, sounding different, showing different materials. It's going to make you stand out like a sore thumb amongst the competition. And NAR just came out with the five key areas that the consumer wants help from the realtor. Can't talk today. And number one is help with pricing.
Yep.
This strategy will ensure that your client does not leave money on the table. So step one is gathering the successful sellers and figuring out a range of high, medium, and low.
And then after that, after they've self-discovered and they can see what range they're in, where do we take them from there?
So the cool thing is, we'll just for argument's sake, say there's a high range and they're all finished basement, 4 bedrooms, high square footage, whatever, upgrades. And then we're at a client who's unfinished basement, a little less on square footage, maybe 1 or 2 less bedrooms, a little bit less on square footage, but in there that middle range. And let's just say the middle range is 360 to 390. Those were the people that were successful based off of maybe there's 5 or 6 properties. 360 to 390. They all had unfinished basements. You can kind of tell they all fit into that middle range. And then anything above that had finished basements, more upgrades, and anything below the 360 was a slab.
Mm-hmm.
So they should already feel good that they're not in the low range.
Right.
Right. They're like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely above them because they all have slabs. So they're already kind of feeling good. So we didn't price the house or anything. All we did was say, what range do you think your home fits in based off of your features? And you go through the spreadsheet with them. We're not going to go into all that in detail, but once they select that, the next key thing is to then say, you know what, let's go ahead and test our theory, test the logic of this with the homes that were rejected by the market.
Mm-hmm.
And those are your expireds. So we don't even say sold. We say successful sellers. We don't say expired. We say rejected by the market. And it's right across the top of the spreadsheet in red. The successful sellers is in green.
Green. As in money.
Right. Rejected by the market. And what you'll see, and remember, you're the one that compiles the data that goes into the spreadsheets. So you get to kind of pick and choose what you're putting in, just like you would on a regular CMA.
Right.
So you already know where the house is going to end up, what range it's going to be in. You don't know the exact price yet because that's up to the seller. Sellers price homes. So what'll end up happening when you test the logic with the rejected by the market is when you put it side by side with the successful sellers, what you're going to notice is that it's also going to have a high, medium, and low range, of course. Mm-hmm. But the low range is going to end up being priced like in the mid range of the successful sellers. So you'll see that the slab homes were all priced too high.
Right.
And they didn't sell. And the mid range was up where the high range was. And then the high range was way out of who knows where the heck they were hanging out.
They were way out of the high range.
Yeah.
That's an overprice. Like they overpriced.
They overpriced. And 99% of homes that don't sell, it's because of price.
Yep.
So now you're able to kind of test the logic. So that's really nice. So we have that step 1, then we have step 2, which is just to test the logic so that they can see what is going to happen if they try to go too high. They're going to end up on the rejected by the market sheet. And that's what we're trying to avoid. Right. So we want to keep you off that sheet. So that's step 2. Now, step 3, they've already picked their price. So that's step 2. Step 3, we test the logic. Then step 4 is before we even show them the direct competition, we actually take out a net sheet and we go through a fake offer. And what we're doing is we've already determined they're going to be in the mid-range, anywhere from 360 to 390. We've already determined that. They've agreed. They're like, yeah, I'm going to be somewhere in there, maybe higher because we haven't even looked at the direct competition yet. But I want to get a gauge right there that if we were to pick the middle of the mid-range, so 360 to 390, if we just said, you know what, let's just go to 375 for argument's sake, we don't know where we're going to price your house yet, but let's just make sure the sale makes sense for you right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we break out our net sheet. We say, listen, if we price it at 375, we tend to stay there. We do not do price reductions, period. So we are going to price it unless something crazy goes on with the market. we should absolutely end up in the proper market, and then we wait. And if we negotiate at all, let's hope we negotiate up, which means we have multiple offers. But I don't plan on reducing your home. So if we listed at 375, let's, for the dummy argument's sake, the dummy offer, we get an offer at 375. Now we're able to look right on this old sheet, because we have the columns of all seller contributions. What's happening in the market? Are sellers contributing to closing costs or not? Let's look. Well, before, no, but we are now starting to see some seller concessions, aren't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So now all of a
Absolutely.
sudden, yeah, closing costs are starting to become a factor. So we might back off a little bit. So if closing costs have been like a couple of 5,000s and a couple of zeros, maybe we just say, you know what, let's just take a middle of the road 3,000. Our net sheet is already highlighted that anything in yellow is negotiable anyway. So they kind of already say, listen, this is a fake offer. We just want to make sure it makes sense. So we put in the closing cost, a home warranty, our commission, contract stipulations, if we think there might be some repairs, things like that. And then we get their first and second mortgage. If there is a second, we put that on there. We figure out what their tax liability will be for the year. We add everything up, subtract it from 375, and do a big circle on what their net estimate net is. And then we turn that sheet over and we say, okay, it looks like you're going to net 48,000 from this sale. Does that make sense? And then we just don't say a word.
And if you're not doing this part when you're on a listing appointment, if you implement only one thing Holly's talking about today, do that. Because I think that's where you stand out as a professional, because you're saying, let's see if this even works for you and this makes sense. But then it also gives you an idea of how realistic they are as well.
It lets you know who you're dealing with.
Exactly.
So
I mean,
go
if
ahead.
one thing, I was just saying, if one thing is your big takeaway today, do a net sheet.
Yeah. And actually the net sheets those end up becoming the cover sheet for every offer that we ever submit.
Mhm.
So when we submit an offer to our seller, the whole cover sheet is the net sheet, because I don't want them to look so much at the terms. I want them to look at the bottom line that's circled that tells them what they're walking away with.
Exactly.
I don't care how many closing costs they want to ask for. And none of that matters if the bottom line doesn't matter. So let's just get to the bottom line you need. So if I circle it and say 48,000 and I flip it over and I say, that's what it looks like you're going to net. And I just point my pen to it and I just stare down. Don't even look at them. Don't even make eye contact. Just say,
Mhm.
so that's what this sale looks like. What do y'all think? They're either going to be like, man, that's pretty good. Or they're going to be like, oh, shoot. And then you stay in curiosity. So if they say great, say good. Let's see if maybe we can get more, because we don't even know what the direct competition is doing yet. Or they might go, your job is to say, oh, what does that mean? What were you hoping for? Well, we were really thinking we were going to get 60. Okay, so tell me a little bit more about the 60. Like, where were you coming up with that? What do you need the 60 for? Just don't be judgmental. Don't be like, you're crazy. Don't just stay in curiosity. Walk them through what the difference was and where were they coming up with that difference. And if they're like, well, we thought we could get more, great. So what made you think you could get more? Are there some comps that I didn't show here? Were you looking at something different? Well, we were looking at this estimate. Well, I brought this estimate. Let me show you these 6 other real estate companies that also priced your house via the computer, and it's a $78,000 range. So I'm not sure if you just picked the best one, but look what all these other computers say. So we can't go by what the computer says. Like, doesn't work that way. But was there another area that you looked at? No, we just kind of wanted 60 because we want to pay off our debt.
Right.
Well, I wish that mattered, but buyers don't really care what you need to do, unfortunately. And when you go to buy a house, you're not really going to care what that seller needs either. And I get where you're coming from, and I wish it was higher. But the good thing is, we didn't price your house yet. So if I'm at 48 with a dummy offer and you're needing 60, that's $12,000. Well, remember the offer that I just took you through, we went in the middle of the road of the successful sellers, which was 360 to 390. I said, let's just pick 375 as a starting point. Why don't we now take a look at the direct competition? We know you're going to be in the middle range, but let's see how your house compares to who you're competing against. Because once you price your house, you're either helping someone else sell or they're helping you sell. So
Mhm.
you get to choose. And that's all going to be determined by your timing need. So now let's look at the direct competition and see if we can't get you closer to 60. And then you take them through that process. And then when everybody gains agreement on the price, then you do a new sheet. And then that is the sheet that you're trying to be at or beat when it comes time to putting the home on the market and offers start coming in. That's the expectation. And then they have that great starting point. And so when every offer comes in, the cover sheet is the net sheet. They've already seen it. They can kind of see, oh yeah, this one's going to net. Oh, this one's netting a 62. I wonder what was different. You know, what happened, or whatever the case may be. But now once you gain agreement, you guys have a healthy starting point and they get to pick the price. Say, listen, you're in the mid range, but look at the direct competition. It's not 360 to 90. Now it's 365 to 397. So now let's look at each of these houses and see how does yours compare to each one. Because if you want to be at 370, you better have exactly what they have or better, or you're just going to help them sell faster, which is fine. If you have time, I don't mind if you want to help somebody else sell. But then just remember that's going to now be a comp that could be used against you in a court of law. Just kidding. But because it's all about justification. We have to sell the house to the buyer. And if they're getting a loan, we have to sell that price to the appraiser.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's, I mean, of course it's more involved, but those basically is the process we take the client through. It's very conversational. You gain that agreement. And then once everybody agrees on the price, then you say, okay, now that we priced it right, let me show you how I'm going to expose it to the market and get it sold quick. And then you go through your marketing plan, your 15-point high quality exposure plan that is absolutely going to blow everybody else out of the water. If whatever you do for your client, every little thing, make sure you talk about it. Make sure that it's in a paragraph that you can explain the benefit to them. And if you go all in on every listing, there's no reason that somebody's not going to be willing to pay you your full commission for everything you do. So if you have access to video tours, Matterports, whatever it is, I'd do everything. Do everything. Why wouldn't you?
One thing I wanted to just kind of throw out there is, the pricing is the most important thing. I mean, homes that are priced correctly sell. Because we can overprice a property and market it as much as we can. Your marketing plan is it can be good, but it's not good for an overpriced property. So I think one thing that you can think about as an agent is, okay, do I want to be a pricing strategist or do I want to be, a marketing expert? And I think you do need to know what to do to market a property, especially now, because sellers are like, what are you doing to get my home sold? It's been on the market for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 30 days. They want to know what you're doing. Yes, you need to have that plan, but you do need to be considering yourself more of a pricing strategist, in my opinion, when it comes all down to it.
Yeah, I would much rather position myself as a pricing expert and a pricing strategist over someone that can enter a house in the MLS, put a lockbox on it, put a sign in the yard, run social media ads. Hopefully you're outsourcing every bit of that, and that's not anything you're doing. Like that, to me, that's not where the skill level comes in that they want to hire someone. I want them to be so blown away by my pricing conversation and my strategy and my skill set that shows them how much research I did. I mean, this doesn't take a minute. Like, this is a good hour of research, putting it in the spreadsheets, compiling the data, looking through. So this is not an easy strategy at all. You're speaking a different language. Those people are gonna be like, hey, this is not like anybody else that's ever come in here. This person really knows what they're doing and what they're talking about. And that's going to set the tone for your entire relationship. So I'm with you. I mean, yeah, I'm going to do all the marketing and I'm going to explain it, but hopefully I've delegated all that. I mean, I don't want to be running social. I mean, luckily our social media ads run by themselves, but
Right.
I mean,
Well, also too, I think if you do become that pricing strategist, you yourself become convicted. And that comes across when you're talking with them. They're like, she has examined every single thing. He or she, sorry, not going to leave out the men. They have he or she has examined every single thing. They're truly convicted and they know these inside and out. And they're talking me through this. You start building trust with them, and then they're going to be, if she's this convinced too, I think they may not say this, but I think they're thinking in the back of their head, she's not going to let me leave money on the table.
And I think that should be part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to get this secured for continuing education credit in the state of Georgia. And again, we're sitting here for 30 minutes, but this is a 3-hour course.
Oh, yeah.
And this is 8 years of diving into this strategy, perfecting it, compiling the reports, going through the dialogues. I mean, this has been a labor of love, and we have put our hearts and souls, because we really believe that when you can go in as that pricing strategist, expert, like you said, who you become more convicted, you become more confident in how you explain the data, and the sellers love it. Like, the feedback on this, I've done it myself with, I think, 7 or 8 people, and they absolutely love it. I was just going to practice it. And that anybody can do that. Like, once you learn it, you should throw it out there. Hey, I just learned a really powerful pricing strategy, and I would love some people to practice on. That's what I did, because I wasn't actively selling at the point. My license was active, but I wasn't selling. So I was able to throw that out there to practice, and they love it. The people are just like, wow, this is so different. This makes so much sense. Oh my God, why doesn't everybody do this? I'm like, because a lot of people don't know about it. That's all. Because they're taught from a computer program, from people, employees that work at the MLS, show you how to do a CMA based off of a computer program, basically. They haven't been, most of the people at MLS, at FMLS and MLS, they haven't been selling homes. They're not bringing in this high level strategy. They're saying, pick this, pick this, pick this, hit this button, hit Cloud CMA, hit Wizard, hit whatever, print it out and read it on the way to your appointment. I mean, it's awful.
I mean, it's like, we saw somebody else get into trouble for algorithms. I mean, I don't, like, let's not do that. We're professionals, and I think you have to be truly convicted to be able to really help lead, guide, and protect somebody.
And that's it. LGP, lead, guide, and protect. My favorite 3 words in real estate.
Yep.
Those 3 words should be on your website. They should be on your social media profile. I mean, they should be in your presentation, whatever you have, your bio. It's all about, thank you, Joe Stump, leading, guiding, and protecting. I'll give credit where credit's due.
Yep.
That's from Joe Stump.
Yeah.
And I love it, and I'll quote Buffini a lot. So there's a lot of great stuff, but the conversations are changing.
Yes.
How are you changing your skills? Really get dialed in to a strong strategy. I think it is really important. And those are pretty much the 7 steps. So as we kind of wrap up and do our takeaways, what are a couple of takeaways that you want to, some best practices on pricing, Lori, for the group?
I would say some best practices on pricing is, God, there's so many. First of all, if you're curious about it and you want to dive into it, of course we can help you with it, but you're going to have to practice this first. You're going to have to practice it. Take your own home, take a relative's home, and practice this several times before you actually just go on a listing appointment and do this. So I would say you need to practice this first and get a really good understanding, because if you're adopting a new way, you're going to have to get used to how this actually works and the different steps, and convincing yourself of how you can put this into practice is really what I would say is definitely practice it the first time around. And then know that this is a really great way to discover who exactly you're going to be dealing with. It starts unpeeling so many different layers, and it becomes something that you get to decide, is this a realistic seller? And are we going to be working together for a win-win here?
I think it takes you so much more into the conversation instead of the presentation. And so
That's true.
you're not talking at people. you're conversing with them, and this will help you discover if a win-win working relationship can be established. I want to know right away, who do I have on the other side of the table? And I think it eliminates people overpricing their house. We go in the class in depth into talking about the overpricing. We're not going to do that today, but the dangers of overpricing. And to me, the biggest danger is you could potentially lose a client and lose referrals. So, I mean, there's a lot of dangers that come with overpricing, but to me, it's a broken relationship. You know, when I hear agents walking around going, "Oh, I took this overpriced listing," and they're like mad about it. They're like mad at their client. What an unhealthy dynamic, which is just really unfortunate. So I think having that healthy dynamic right from the start, and like you said, start out small. Maybe you never brought the rejected by the markets before. Maybe you should just bring the rejected by the market and do a net sheet and just start there. Like start slow until you can uncover all the layers of this. So we're happy to provide more information about it. Just reach out to Lori or myself. We're happy to tell you more about it. But those are some of the things, I think be prepared to have different conversations.
Market shifting, be prepared for sure.
The market shift. Oh, it's so good. I'm so glad. All right. Well, take care, everybody. This has been Take 6. Look for our Take 7 soon. And we look forward to seeing you again at Coaches on Call.